China is crumbling down. We're seeing some major shifts in their exports and imports. The economy of China is quivering. How much of that's accurate? Well, you have to trust the numbers, but why is that so important to us? If you're in Europe or in the United States, you may ask the simple question, why should I care what's happening over in China? Remember that China is the second largest economy in the world, and when it comes to manufacturing, it is number one. Stuff comes from China. That's just a simple fact of it. And what's happening there directly impacts not only what's happening on your store shelves, but impacts your banks and your stock markets and your portfolios and your employment situation. All these things can be impacted by what's going on over in China. So I'm going to walk you through a super simple kind of what's going on over there and how it's going to impact you. All right, folks, this video is sponsored by Genesis Gold Group. Jonathan over there, he does a fantastic job walking people through what they can do with their IRAs, 401ks, if you can get them out of stocks and bonds where it's just a whole bunch of governments and corporations who are up to their eyeballs in debt. Not a great investment these times, but what you can do is you can get into physical assets like silver, gold, and platinum. Look down the comments, description down below or in the pinned comment to find their contact info. USA will suffer. Europe will suffer when we see what's happening in China. We've seen the lockdowns that have triggered all these protests in China, and it is widespread. We saw previously that Apple was trying to keep the production of their iPhones and iPads and whatever's coming out of China, and so they were locking tens of thousands of workers into the facility. They weren't allowed to leave. When the people there were protesting because they wanted to escape. They wanted to leave. They were brought in, told they were going to make a whole bunch of extra money, and then once they got locked into the compound, they were told, actually, we're not going to pay you that money. And the people are like, well, I want to go home. And they're like, well, you can't go home because, you know, cough, cough. You gotta stay here. Can't leave. And they're like, well, we want to leave. Now, if you can just imagine being locked into a compound and not allowed to leave, and you're not even getting paid what you were agreeing to get paid, you can imagine how they'd be a little bit upset. And we're seeing this across China of what's going on. So we have these lockdowns that are triggering these protests in China. We also see that the interest rates are impacting what's going on over there. Interest rates both for China as well as for nations around the world. So how's this all shaking out? So China is the second largest economy in the world. 18.6% of the world's GDP is generated in China. But yet we see production grinding to a halt there, partially because the orders have stopped coming, partially because of the lockdowns, partially because of people not wanting to work there, at least for those terms. China's exports in the month of November were down 8.7%. You could almost round that off to 10%, but down 9%-ish. That is a tremendous, massive, I mean, we're not talking about a small company here. We're talking about a nation. Their exports down 8.7% in November as compared to the previous November. Massive deceleration there. What will also kind of show that is the imports of mostly raw materials into China was down 10.6%, which kind of indicates that we're going to probably see that deceleration continue into December, if not get worse. So interest rates around the world are making it so that people have less disposable income. Inflation is making it so everything's more expensive. It's more expensive to get the raw materials, and people still have the same amount of money for the most part. So they have to pick and choose what they're going to purchase. And because the purchasing in Europe, Africa, Asia, and the United States has dropped off a ledge, orders are not coming through anymore. And the factories in China are having to shut down. And when they shut down, they don't pay people. And when they don't pay people, people get upset because they still have mortgages. They still have to pay their rent on their apartments or their condos or whatever. People are going to get really riled up over in China. And this is part of the reason why I think they're clamping down so hard, is because they see this coming. They see this slowdown coming, and they expect to see a lot more people acting out, and they need to be able to make people disappear real fast, real easy. And that's what they can do. They can just find your name, press a little button, and your phone suddenly turns red. And every time you try checking into public transportation or a store, suddenly the police come running and they quarantine you, make you disappear as if you never existed. Maybe it's because you have a false a positive test, or maybe it's because you said something you weren't supposed to. It might not just be contagious cough, cough. It may be contagious thoughts, ideas. You can have ideas in your head, you just can't express them, or else you get disappeared. How much exposure does the United States and Europe have to China? Let's just say a lot. The developing countries of the world owe China $1.3 trillion in loans. This is the Belt and Road Initiative that they've gone out throughout the entire world, and they've given lots of loans to low-income countries to build airports, seaports. And of course, usually buried into the contract is that if they default on their loan, China can come in and basically take the asset, take the airport, take ownership of the port. And that's how they're getting naval installations around the world, as well as air bases. Yeah, they're kind of following suit with the United States of building air bases and seaports all around the world for their military planes and ships. The United States and Europe have loaned trillions of dollars to China. And a lot of this is coming from banks. Now, the World Bank keeps giving loans to China for some reason, which is weird. China itself is sitting on $3 trillion worth of foreign reserves. They have that much cash just kind of sitting there. Now, the United States does not have $3 trillion of cash sitting there, and nor does pretty much any European country or all the European countries put together. They have quite a bit of cash sitting there. When it comes to economic hardships and hard times, they are much better positioned to weather the storm than Western countries like the United States and Europe. Hard times are coming, we're seeing that, but we see certain countries taking efforts to stabilize themselves politically in really horrendous ways, building all these camps everywhere, isolation camps. But also financially, they're putting themselves in a position where they can kind of weather the coming storm. And the fact that they're getting prepared and Western countries are not should be a concern. Are you getting prepared? Are you stocking up on physical assets like food, lots of food, other hard assets that help you become more self-sufficient, whether it's power items, power banks, solar generators, solar panels, whether it's tools, whether it's things to help you generate an income on the side at home. What are you doing that's getting you prepared for the storm that's coming? Because, mark my words, it's coming. You don't have massive countries like China and Russia and all these other countries like India. They're stockpiling up money, foreign reserves, gold, silver. They're stocking up because they realize that hard times are coming. Smart people and smart countries are doing that right now. Question is, what are you doing? Are you getting more ready? And are you helping people you care about get more ready? That's what we can do. All right, folks, if you found this video useful, helpful, you might want to check out this other video from me right here. I'll see you over there, or I'll see you later. Steve Poplar out.